companies that are really leaning in and building for the future are seeing value.
So Dylan, BCG recently released its report, Build for the Future. 1,200 senior executives were surveyed. Can you give us a brief overview of some of the insights?
The first is, I think what we saw was that only 5% of companies are actually seeing value from AI. So a lot of investment going in, but a lot of executives not feeling like the value's there. But interestingly, companies that are really leaning in and building for the future are seeing value. And when you actually pull those companies out and you look at what, their TSR, total shareholder return, they're seeing 3.5 times higher shareholder return. So few companies are getting there, but the ones that are really delivering.
To what extent are companies, and in particular these future-built companies, adopting agentic AI?
When you look at where the value is coming from today, agentic AI is about 17% of where the value is coming from. So still a lot of the value is from traditional AI. But what we see is future build companies are actually much higher in their use of agentic AI, roughly about 30%, a little bit more than 30%. And underneath that, what are they doing? They're attacking some of the big workflows that are delivering value. They're reshaping, they're inventing new ways to attack markets through AI versus just deploying AI and or just doing pilots. They're thinking about, how do I scale? How do I change the way that people work? How do our agents work with humans? How do I rescale, retrain? So they're thinking it all the way through.
What approach should companies seeking to be future built take?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned a little bit, but can we go into some more specifics?
A lot of times when clients ask this question, I think they're looking for silver bullet. They're saying, what's the one thing I can do to actually create value to make this work? And what the research clearly shows is it's not one thing that actually drives it. It's several things that you've got to go after. One, I mean, clearly you need a multi-year ambition, and that's typically driven by the top. So it's CEO-led, CEO -1, that executive team that's really bought into a long-term ambition here. So that's point number one. Point number two is, to my earlier point, it's they're thinking about, where they can reshape and invent new businesses through AI. So a lot of companies, I think, get caught up in just deploying AI, but they're not really stepping back and saying, how do I reshape a function, marketing, supply chain, whatever it is, and change the way that people work? The third thing that they do is they think a lot about, well, what's the new operating model for the company? And a lot of times this means investing more in IT. This means shifting dollars. This means thinking about the talent that's needed to run the new workflows. So agents and humans working together. And a lot of times this requires new types of people. This requires upskilling people. This requires a whole new type of organizational design to make that work. And so companies are focusing a lot on that. And then the last thing I'd say is they spend a lot of time thinking about the tech architecture. Now, the ones that are really making this work are sort of balancing how to work within a legacy environment, but they have to think a lot about their data. They have to think a lot about how they work in the broader ecosystem with different partners and players, and thinking about how all that comes together in a scalable way to deliver value.
Thank you so much, Dylan.